It's Friday, October 20th, 2023. Welcome to a slightly wrecked episode of our show this week. But let me...
Don't start it like that.
Oh, no. I'll explain. Whatever. I am transparent with our listeners. I don't hide things. I'm not playing a character. I don't pretend. I am myself. Therefore, I don't hide things. I just tell people what's going on.
Is that
not
is
bad?
That,
we haven't been shot or anything.
Is that coming from somewhere? It sounds very specific that we're not playing characters. Like, did you have something in mind?
No. But what I mean is when you say, "Oh, don't say," I don't.
Well, I mean,
yes. Okay.
You make it sound like it's far more of a train wreck than it usually is.
No. Well, we'll see. But no, what I mean is the character thing. Yes, I am bothered by people who. That aren't clear about themselves playing characters when they say they're somebody, especially when they use their real names. It does happen, and it's annoying to me. So that's a nitpick of my own. But I'm just saying that I've always basically just, been very upfront about whatever's going on. So before I get to that, I'm going to do our shill segment as best I can. So go to patreon.com/Ozone Nightmare to support the show via that platform. If you go to the show homepage, as far as I know, they haven't updated it yet, so you will still see an array of rounded squares on the right that have various logos. One has the PayPal logo that lets you donate through that. You will see a book with a bookmark that will take you to Lando's Amazon author page. If you click on the skull, that takes you to my Linktree. And at the very bottom is the YouTube channel where, one note, depending on what YouTube is blocking, the second part of the John Carpenter video may have to go up on Wednesday because... I have to, if it gets blocked again, which it probably will, then I have to create a secondary video track that just has stills. But as with the first one, if you want the full uncut version, because of course I'm saving that one and dumping the stills one, that'll be on YouTube if it has to be. I'm hoping they won't. I tried something a little different this time to maybe get around their stuff, but I don't know if it's going to work. If it doesn't, it just might come out on Wednesday. And the third one... just depends how fast I can edit it because these got progressively longer. The first one was 2.5 or 240. The second one was 3.5, and I think the last one's closer to 4. So it takes a while to edit them all together. That's all. Whatever. The audio comes out on Mondays. That's easy. Audio I have edited inside of 30 minutes. That's nothing. The video takes longer. So I try to kind of preload it, but I can only do so much there. So...
yeah.
Now, as far as why the show might seem a little different than usual, even I feel like I'm speaking differently than usual, is because
You're
just got back.
exhausted and I'm sick.
I'm not really exhausted, but I am less energetic than usual, perhaps, because I went for a 2-hour hike in Monterey with my wife, and you wouldn't know it to look at me, but it's not like I hike all the time and do a lot of physical exertion. So... I was just happy I was able to do it and not feel like I was having a heart attack. So I guess I'm in okay shape. Whereas my wife, she does this stuff. She's much more fit than I am now. She goes to the gym all the time and all that stuff. So she was fine. So we did that. And then I drove back because at that point she did seem a little tired. The sun was beating on us. Honestly, I think that was the harder part was the sun was it was getting warm in the second half of the hike. So that does tend to drain me anyway more than actual physical exertion does. I can't stand the sun beating on me. So I'm sure I'm sunburned because I can feel like heat emanating off my face, which is also irritating as hell. So that was about a 2-hour, 40-minute drive back. And so my energy level is probably at about 50% of where it usually is. And Lando has been sick for a week now.
No, it's like
through the week.
Oh, I guess I mean, if you count business days,
Yeah.
5 days.
Yeah, yeah. So for more than a few days, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But not COVID, right? I mean, you've tested negative the whole time.
Oh, I've tested negative like twice.
Yeah, so it's a standard.
But I'll give you a hilarious insurance story to give you a concept of how
they're always funny.
How Brazil. I don't want to call it Brazilian, but how Brazil-like, as in the movie, things are. I just happen to have a physical scheduled, which is considered a wellness visit, right? And I was sick at that point, and this is when I was heading into it, and I was like, oh, you know what, I should go and get checked out, because I have the appointment anyway. So I went in, and I called ahead, and I said to them, I was like, I am sick. I was like, I'm gonna come in anyway though for a check, and the secretary was like, yeah, go ahead. I don't think the secretary knew what she was talking about. When I got there, it was very funny. I sat down, and the nurse that attended me was like, so this is a wellness check, right? And I'm like, no. I was like, I'm sick. I was like, this is like a sick check. And the nurse was like, well, I don't know if we can do that.
Uh-oh, you were scheduled for wellness, sir. I cannot handle illness.
And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah. She's like, insurance isn't going to like that. So, I mean, you might have to do the wellness check and then leave and reschedule for a sick check. And I'm like, and I was getting annoyed at that point because I was like, hey, I'm here and I'm sick, and I'll pay the insurance for a sick check. Like, if there's like a copay or something like that. But yeah, it rankled them, and she had to go talk to the doctor, and the doctor had to agree to it. And I was like, man, what kind of weird shit's going on that this is the thing? Like, it's not even like I don't have insurance. I have insurance. I'm a patient there. Like, it was very annoying. Yeah. Not to mention the fact that, essentially she came out and she was like, you have some kind of cold. And man, so there's a thing so I'm back in Jersey now, and I'm back on like Jersey healthcare. And one of the things that annoys me about Jersey healthcare is you've got more options, right?
And yet... you somehow have less, right?
Man, now, you know what it is? It's just like...
More options, less care.
They throw antibiotics at fucking everything.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah. She was like, how do you respond to antibiotics? And I was like, I'm reasonably okay. She's like, here, take these. And I was like, well, is it bacterial? She's like, I'm not really sure. She goes, if you take it for 2 days and you don't feel like it's making a difference, stop. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, did anything make you think that it would be bacterial? She's like, no, just if. And I'm kind of sitting there going, this is why we have all this fear of like these super viruses cropping up, or the super bacteria cropping up. Because if they're just willy-nilly throwing antibiotics at everything, it's like, okay, well, yeah, you're basically breeding an environment where, it's survival of the fittest, and some superbug is going to wipe everybody out. Yes. So in Vermont, there are fewer doctors. So if you don't like your care, you don't have as many options. In Jersey, there's lots of options, but it does feel a bit, I don't know. There's more options, I guess, but there's just more crap. Yeah, my wife had a massive mess when we moved down here. She was trying to figure out her medication, and she had these doctors that seemed like they knew what they were doing, and then all of a sudden, like, they just got the prescriptions all wrong, and it was all weird, and I was stupefied. But I was stupefied down. I'm back off the mountain. I'm stupefied anyway. Like, the amount of weird gun violence actually is starting to, like, not even like there's the standard weird gun violence with people showing up in offices and parades and schools, right? Which is scary in itself. But the degree to which people lose their shit and shoot each other over like arbitrary shit at this point is kind of weird to me. Like there's a story about a guy whose son wasn't getting played enough on like a little league football team, so he shot the coach.
I'm not sure if that's going to drive the next coach to play you more.
Well, that's the thing is I'm sitting there going, wait a minute, what's the logic on this? Like, is this just madness? Like, was there no thought around this at all? Like, I mean,
probably not. There probably wasn't.
Well, so I mean, is the rage that intense that you just don't think about, what your long-term goals are?
I don't think people think that far.
Okay, so he's not
so consumed with rage they don't. Think
yeah, so
far.
he's not thinking I'm going to shoot this coach and that's going to show him that he's got to play my son more. Right? It's not that kind of madness.
He's thinking, oh yeah, I'll show you. That's what he's thinking.
Okay. Yeah, I'll show you. I'm going to go to prison now. Ha ha ha. Take that. Yeah, so that surprises me more often. That kind of weird shit. But yeah. That's okay. My immune system still works, thankfully. I'm getting better.
Good.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, oddly I trust my medical services less down here than I did in Vermont. And in Vermont, I had kind of weird problems with them anyway. So, yeah.
So what you're saying is healthcare in the United States everywhere is borked, just in different ways.
It's a little bit. It's borked in different ways. Yeah. And I've said this before. I got nothing against doctors. There are some very good doctors out there. But you know what? Any profession has its true craftsmen and its jobbers. And jobbers are people who just show up, put the hours in to get paid so they can go home and chill the fuck out, and like that's great when it's that's not a problem when it's a store clerk, or there's many professions where phoning it in is not a problem, but when your doctors are phoning it in, it's a bit frightening.
Sure.
So anyhow,
I understand.
Not to start on that level of fucking train wreck, but I guess you have pre-train wreck people with this show, so.
Yeah, I see. That's why you say these things up front, and that way, it's. Not
I don't know
surprising.
if I can. I don't know if I can laugh. I think I might actually be.
Can you snicker?
I can probably snicker, but I don't know if I can laugh without like coughing. So we'll see. We'll see what we can do. But I have two very weird reviews for you today. I read two very different Batman books. I had some time.
Oh, okay. Are these?
Yeah, I read
these are comics when you say books, right?
Oh yeah. They're graphic novels. Yeah, these are graphic novels.
Just checking, because there are Batman books. So
there are. Oh yeah.
Did you read a Batman book?
I've read some very good Batman books, but yeah, these are two graphic novels. I read a few, but these are the only two I'm bringing to the table tonight. But they're good. They're kind of a weird, not comparison. But they're weird to play off each other. They have nothing to do with each other. This is two different books. I think, are they both Black Label? I'm not really sure.
Well, tell me the names, and I shall look it up.
Okay, so one of them is Batman Reptilian. That one is DC Black Label. Okay. So DC Black Label is kind of like it's almost kind of like they're Elseworlds now. I don't think DC Black Label doesn't happen in the main universe, and so that's one of them, and that's by Garth Ennis. So I knew what I was getting into with that.
Yeah.
And then the other one is Batman One Bad Day, the Riddler. That was done by Tom King. Now, the one bad day thing was some kind of high concept thing they had.
Yeah, they've done several of those. I know that.
Yeah, they did them for a bunch of the Batman villains. Is it Black Label?
That does not indicate that it's Black Label. It says mature, but I don't see Black Label.
I cannot imagine that this is part of the larger universe. There's no way this is part of the larger universe. I'm just going to tell you that.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not Black Label, but One Bad Day is a one-shot series under the Batman header. So it sounds like they didn't want to do Black Label, but they also didn't want it to be.
Yeah. So both of these are clearly one-off, like Elseworld Batman short stories, right?
Ooh, there's a Two-Face one. Well,
so I don't know who wrote the Two-Face one, right? I picked this one up because I like Tom King.
Wow, did you see the cover for the Bane one? That is extraordinary artwork.
Who did the art for it?
I don't know who did the cover. Howard, no, it can't be Howard Porter. I know his work. Well, you know what? Maybe it's evolved.
Well, you know what? Actually, having read this One Bad Day book, I would be very curious as to what the other ones would be like, because
no, actually, I think that is Howard Porter. Wow, that's a really beautiful piece of artwork. Huh.
Let me review this for you so you can get a concept of what these One Bad Day books looks like. Now, of these two, Reptilian was the more lighthearted one, which is hilarious considering what it's about. But we'll start with One Bad Day. So, Batman One Bad Day, The Riddler by Tom King is essentially a concept book. Batman is not in it as much as you think he is. It's more so about the Riddler. And essentially what happens is the Riddler one day randomly shoots somebody in the head. And they arrest him and they bring him in. And he says, "Hey, I want to talk to Batman." And Gordon tries to be like, fuck you, you're going to Arkham. Why'd you shoot this guy? Yada, yada. And yeah, because, the Riddler, right? The Riddler is kind of one of those guys that no one's really that worried about him. You know what I mean? Like, he's always been kind of a secondary villain. You're not afraid of the Riddler the way you are of Bane or something like that.
No,
right?
He's more of a prankster as opposed to...
Yeah, right. Exactly.
He feels a lot like, a lot of times he feels like they're playing, you know how there's the two Jokers, there's the old style one who's just like, look, it's a fish in your lunchbox. And then there's the other one that's like, I've gassed your whole family. Enjoy tonight.
Yeah,
Happy
exactly,
holidays.
right.
He's like the former version. It's almost like I almost feel like the Riddler is what they wanted to replace the old Joker with, because they couldn't have two of them running around. So they turned the Joker into a maniac. And then the Riddler is more of a, just somewhat annoying guy.
Just wait. So Gordon tries to strong arm him, at which point the Riddler starts just spilling information because he knows they're being recorded. So he's like, does the rest of the force know that you were having an affair with this officer before you had her shipped out? This is stuff from like Batman Year One. I was like, and then he says, I love this. I don't know if this is true. I hope it's true. He basically says, did you know that, when the Joker visited your house and shot your daughter, it's like, did you know that was my plan, that I gave that to him? I was like, I had the plan. Yeah, he goes, I had the plan. I had nothing to do with it, so I just gave it to him. At which point, Gordon loses his shit.
What?
Now.
Oh, okay. Wait.
Yeah.
Before we go past that.
Yep.
Does he explain why he had that plan to give to the Joker?
Oh, no, he just had it and wasn't doing anything with it. And the Joker was apparently looking to do something. And Riddler was like, here, you can have my plan. Go for it. Right? This will make sense as the story goes on, right? So as you're getting these scenes, you are also getting these scenes of Riddler as a child. And as a child, essentially what it comes down to is the Riddler was really smart. Okay. His father was the headmaster of some super high level, like a sleepaway school, like an Exeter type school, right? Okay. For like the rich and super smart. And he basically had an affair with a prostitute, and she got pregnant. And he took the child because the child was really, really smart. And so he never really knew. So the Riddler never really knew his mom and was raised by his dad, who was abusive and kept pushing him to be better and better and better. And so he's in this school. He's super smart, except he's got this English teacher that keeps putting these riddles at the end of his exams. And the general theme you have here is that he can't figure them out. He can study everything. He's so smart, but he can't figure out these fucking riddles because they require something other than just studying. So you're left with that idea, and they cut back to the present, and the Riddler is now being moved to Arkham, right? You got Gordon there, you got a bunch of SWAT guys, and they're going to move him, and Gordon's getting ready to put the jacket on him. And the Riddler says to the SWAT guys, hey, if any of you have anything to do with this, when I get out of Arkham, I'm going to kill your families. By the way, I know all the names of your kids and your wives, and starts reciting their wives and kids. He's like, if anybody touches me, if anybody moves me, he's like, I'm going to kill them all. So now you have these 4 SWAT guys that are like, well, what do we do? And Gordon's like, come on, guys, we got to move him. And the SWAT guys are like, well, we can't fucking move him. He's like, he's going to kill our families. And Gordon's like, no, he's not. He's like, he's going to go to Arkham. And they start having an argument. Right? And what do you think happens? Itchy trigger finger. They gun each other down.
Oh, you mean all the cops shoot each
other?
other?
The SWAT guys shoot each other because they're so fucking worried about their families. It's far more tense in the book. I'm giving you the Cliff Notes version of it. But essentially, it's very tense the way the Riddler does it. There's a weird intensity to him that has never been there before, right?
Yeah.
He's far more...
This is Garth Ennis, right?
No, this isn't Garth Ennis. This is the Tom King version.
Okay.
He's far more aware of everybody and everything. Like there's something. It's like he's on drugs or something like that make him even smarter. So now Gordon is sitting there going, "Holy shit!" And they put him back in the cell, and he calls Batman, and he's like, "Dude, he wants to talk to you." And he says to him, he's like, "There's something weird about him." It's like he's not acting the way he normally acts. It's like he's got an edge on everything. And as they're doing this, they cut back now, and you've got young Riddler, and he's trying to figure out the answer to this quiz, and his father's being abusive and basically beats him when he doesn't get straight A's. And so he finally he complains to the English teacher and basically says, it's not fair that you give us these riddles because, I can't study for these. And the English teacher is like, hey, he's like, listen, he's like, you're really smart, and he's like, I give you these riddles because I want to challenge you. He's like, because, what do you want to do with your life when you get out of here? It's important that I broaden your horizons. But young Riddler is like, no, I don't want you to broaden my horizons. I just want to get it right because, if he doesn't get it right, he gets beaten by his dad. And there's a whole complex about the fact that his mother was a whore because his father fucking yells it at him when he's beating him.
Wait. I'm sorry. Hold on a minute.
Yep. Okay.
So,
yeah.
So if he doesn't get the riddle right or whatever this puzzle is right.
Yeah. He doesn't get it straight on the test.
Okay. And his dad will beat him.
And his father will beat him for not getting it.
And he doesn't tell the teacher, hey,
no,
my father will beat me if I don't get this right.
No, because his father's the headmaster of the school.
Is this taking place in the 30s or what?
This is like, this has got to be young. This is young Riddler. So it's got to be like in the 40s. You know what? At a boarding school, that's not that weird to hear about. Even today, I could imagine this stuff going on. Boarding schools are a weird environment to put your kids.
I'm struggling with a child who would not be showing visibly signs of abuse. That if they get a riddle wrong, they'll get an A.
Okay, you know what I mean? Okay. Speaking from a background of child psychology and school psych, that's not that weird. Okay. Believe me. Yeah.
I mean, I gotta tell you, I have no interest in this so far. But go ahead.
It's very strange. Yeah, it's very strange. So you cut back to the present, and essentially, the Riddler is in the prison yard, and Batman shows up, and the Riddler's like, "Hey," he's like, "I really wanted to talk to you," and Batman's like, "Yeah, what the fuck's going on here?" He's like, "Yeah," and the Riddler's like, "You know what?" He's like, "I know you're Bruce Wayne," and of course, this makes Batman's asshole pucker up, and he's like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I've known you, Bruce Wayne, from the beginning." Hold on.
Go ahead. I'm not going to say that. Keep going.
Yeah. And he basically says that he's always been a genius. And he is. Like, the way his father, like, when you see him as young Riddler, you realize he is freakishly intelligent.
No, that part has always been. The Riddler has always been made out to be extraordinarily borderline supernaturally smart. So I have no issue with that.
So he says to Batman, I am supernaturally smart, if you want to put it like that. I have always been.
Like, he's Steve like, Rogers smart type thing.
He's like, but I didn't want to be bored. He goes, and I was fine doing my fun little tricks and watching you run through my little mazes. He goes, you know, I used to visit you in your mansion when you were sleeping. He's like, he's like, I used to go in there. He's like, I know all the names of the Robins and stuff like that. And he goes, it used to be fun. He's like, it used to be cute. He's like, but you know what? He goes, I'm done. He's like, I'm so done playing this half-assed. He's like, I'm so bored. He's like, so from now on, he's like, I've just decided that I'm not playing anymore. He's like, so, and of course at this point, Batman goes to kind of grab him, and the Riddler says, if you touch me, I'm going to kill somebody. In fact, every time you touch me, I'm going to kill somebody. He's like, I'll kill someone random too. He's like, that way it'll be awful. He's like, now I'm going to walk out of here, and you're not going to do anything. Because I'm just going to fucking rain terror. And Batman is actually kind of dumbstruck now as to what to do, because like he realizes that this is not, you know, this would almost work if it was like not the Riddler, but it does work in a sense because, like you said, the Riddler is supposed to be freakishly intelligent.
Well, he is, but this is I already hate this. I'll just tell you.
Okay,
like this automatically puts me off. Where you were just going is exactly how you play this, which is, oh no, it's actually the Joker. Something where, because this is the laziest thing to do with this character. Is okay, because as if we've never seen this before. You know what? This character who always acted one way, he's back, but something's different. There's something wrong. Something's off. And now he's a murderer.
I wish that there had been a. I wish that something. Well, okay, so here's the thing. So the thing that puts him over, right? Because that's the thing is, I wish there was more of a clear idea of what put him over, but like essentially the way they explain it is that he never found his mom, and he was never really sure, like he could never find her. She was a prostitute. She kind of disappeared, right? And the way it goes is that at some point he found a henchman who was like, hey, dude, I know somebody who fucked your mom, which is a great line right there. And so the Riddler tracked her back and found her. And when he tracked her back, he was like, hey, why did you give me up? Like, if I was brilliant, if I was like fucking amazing, he's like, why did you give me up to that abusive, like, monster? At which point, I don't think he liked they never tell you what she says, but apparently he didn't like the answers that he got. And he killed her. He strangled her to death. And apparently that is the thing that puts him over the top. Now, in the realm of things that would cause you to have a schizoid break, right? You know how like he's not acting like the Riddler. If you were in that situation and you found out that your mother gave you up to an abusive monster because she just didn't give a shit, and now you knew, right? I mean, wouldn't that kind of put you over the top? I'm not saying that enough so to completely change the character's personality, but I think that's the angle they were looking for, is that all this time he was kind of like, he wasn't going full power. He was always kind of amused with things.
Yeah, I have lots of problems with this.
Well,
so what your question is, if you found out that your okay, the thing is, you know this, you're a writer.
Yeah.
You have to set that up. So the way that you do that is, okay.
They don't have a long enough book to set it up.
Well,
I think that's
then,
the other part.
I'm sorry.
They do these. They're so short. I think, and this is why, you were saying you might read the Two-Face one. This is why I want you to wait, because the One Bad Day thing, I would love to know what the concept for it was, because essentially, let me skip to the end here so you can understand where this is going, and then you can think about what you want to do with these One Bad Day books. So Riddler walks out, and what now happens is a wave of extremely well calculated strategic murders. Nobody will touch the Riddler. He's got everybody basically under his thumb to some degree. Gordon complains to Batman at one point that he followed the Joker one day And the next day, he found out that his daughter's cat had been poisoned and left on her front steps. Like, it's that kind of thing where, like, you know, this Joker has just gone homicidal. Or this Riddler. See, you get me saying it now because the Joker. This Riddler's gone homicidal. And essentially, the body count mounts up to such a degree that it essentially breaks Batman. And Batman kills him. And the whole thing is that when they're in the police yard, the Riddler says to Batman, you know, there's only one thing you can do that'll stop this. And he goes, and I know you won't do it. He's like, which is why I'm going to tra-la-la out the door, and there's nothing you're going to do. And the thing is that Riddler pushes Batman far enough that essentially Batman shows up, and he's like, you know what? There's no other way to stop you than this. And they got to the end, and it ends right there, right? And I got to that ending, and I was like, okay. I was like, I'd love to know, again, what I said before. I'd love to know what the conceit of the One Bad Day series is. Is it one bad day for Batman? Is the idea that it's one bad day that could push him over the top? Or is it one bad day that pushes the villain over the top? Like, I'd love to know what
I have a hunch it's the villain thing, but here it is. From DC's official site. The Dark Knight's worst enemies star in definitive Ultimate Tales. Bad start right there. Revealed today, DC will be publishing a series of standalone 64-page one-shot comics, which I love that they put number 1 on all of these if they're one-shots. This series of releases under the header Batman One Bad Day will tell definitive tales.
They're very short. They're very short. Like this book. This book could have easily to get me where this book wanted me to be. This book had to be like 3 times as long. You know, I would have liked to have spent some... If you had given me more time with the Riddler, right? And shown me what the inside of his mind was like. Like, give me an issue. Give me like a chapter of basically being inside the Joker's mind. I'm sorry, the Riddler. Jesus Christ, why do I keep going back and forth?
That's my fault. Now, by the way, I did find this thing that says, a prestige one-shots intended to showcase Batman's most iconic villains. From DC Comics' most accomplished modern artists and writers.
I like the art.
Oh no!
What?
Okay, the title sets expectations because the phrase "One Bad Day" is meant to be tied to the infamous Batman tale, Batman: The Killing Joke, in which Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons delivered their definitive take on the Joker's One Bad Day. Okay. Yep, got it. All right.
Interesting.
That makes sense because that's right, because that's the Joker's whole thing. Is that one bad day, you know, made me into... I had one bad day and I became the Joker.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it's too short. I think that's the key thing, is that for this book to work for me, I would have to spend more time with the Riddler, get inside his mind, see what his mind is like, right? So that when he actually finds his mother, I understand what breaks in him. Do you know what I mean? Because they're showing you like the history of the Riddler, but they're not giving you really like insight into the Riddler. Like, this book should have been told from the point of view of the Riddler, right? And the fact that he even says to Batman, you know what you've got to do, but you're not going to do it. It's almost like he wants Batman to kill him, right? So there's a lot of stuff going on that I feel like if they'd written it from the Riddler's point of view and given you insight into his thoughts, you know, you would have realized that this thing, like, you could have written it a way where the thing with his mother destroys him. That he's already kind of broken, but this thing fully destroys him, and he just goes homicidal. And that he gets to that point, you know, the whole idea that certain murderers want to be caught, certain murderers want to be stopped. That he wants Batman to kill him. That he can't just kill himself. He wants Batman to kill him. And he's trying to push him to get him to the point where he'll just do it. If they'd written it like that, it would have been more enjoyable for me. I see the bones of what they were going for, but it's just too short to get me from A to B. Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's the thing, is like you were saying, you want to read the Bane book, 64 pages, and they want to do something definitive. It just feels like too much for too little. You know? And I like Tom King, and I could see him trying really hard to make this shit work. But it's just like, I'd love to know if this was his concept or if somebody was like, hey, we'd really like a book where the Riddler goes fucking nuts. You know, and like that idea of him being like really letting his genius take off. Like that is a neat idea. But yeah, it's too much. Too much to go in too little pages.
I can't say whether it's too short. I mean, writers have done a lot with short stories. I think the problem is
this story needs more.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just make it that because his mom threw him away, that suddenly makes him snap. Because you have to.
Well,
the thing is, you have
could
to set up
if you set it up.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You could if you set it up.
And that's what I mean is I don't know that the page count matters because all you need is a couple of flashbacks showing how dependent he is on this idea that his mother had to have a reason. You know, it's like, and honestly, it fits in with the Riddler where you could say, you know, that's the driving thing behind the puzzles is the one riddle he has no answer to, why his mother abandoned him. And to find out that there is no reason, therefore there is no solution, could I see that would break a person whose entire adult life structure is based around riddles and their solutions?
Yeah, and he
sure.
beats the teacher to death, by the way, that gives him the riddles.
Well, that's
the beginning.
All that stuff. Look, number one, you've already half lost me by suddenly making the Riddler into a megalomaniac or a homicidal maniac.
Well, the weird thing though is that I don't know what the hell he's after. Like,
I think that's the point. There is no after because this. If the premise is that they're linking this to the Killing Joke idea, right? The whole thing, and I should have thought of the One Bad Day thing. It makes sense now. And the idea that that guy had this series of things happen in one day and therefore thought, you know what, all of life is a joke, therefore I'm the Joker. That's the premise of that. So if they're taking that and they're trying to extrapolate that onto every other villain, which number one is stupid. I'm sorry, that's a dumb idea. It's because, again, you end up just with all Jokers. I mean, if you're going to make it where I'm going to read the Two-Face one because the thing with Two-Face is,
I hope it's better than this one.
Well, Two-Face
to be fair though, I did enjoy this while I was reading it. Like, this is one of those books where I read it and it was very quick and I got to the end and I was like, interesting. And then I sat and thought about it for a little bit and I was like, you know what? I don't like this and this is why. But I didn't hate it while I was reading it.
No, I understand. I'm not saying it's badly written. Well, I'm not going to say it's a bad book. It probably looks good. But I just have zero interest because the Riddler was never that type of character. Two-Face, because of his dual personality, when the bad Harvey is in charge, he has done extremely savage things. They have demonstrated time and again that he will go way over the line when the evil personality is running things, when the bad head comes up. So it's not a far stretch to make him into a murderer because he basically is a murderer if he flips the coin on the wrong choice.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
He follows the law when it comes up.
Well, I mean,
he does the dent thing when it comes up.
Isn't the Riddler? Aren't they all murderers? I mean, they all have a body count.
I don't.
Hold on one second.
I would have to look at. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure they've all killed people, but there's a difference between the Riddler and the Joker. The Joker will wantonly kill thousands because, in his mind, there's a joke. You know what I mean? He doesn't care. There is no anything.
I'm just curious to see who has the biggest body count. Is there somewhere I can find
the biggest? That's probably none of the big ones. They probably made up some guy in the 90s who killed a country or something because
DC villains highest. All right, hold on. 10 DC villains with the highest kill count. So some of these has got to be Batman's. All right, so Joker's number 10. The Joker's killed thousands of people in his career.
Yes, that makes sense.
So he's number 10. Ra's al Ghul has killed way more because he's been around for centuries.
Sure you go. Sure.
And then we're off of Batman because Cyborg Superman apparently has destroyed.
Yeah. See, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah, Vandal Savage. Let's see. These are not. These are the Batman Who Laughs, dude. I haven't read any of those books. Do you even know what the concept on those is? I had no interest.
I think there's supposed to be alternate dark dimension versions of him or something because it's called it's like Batman Metal.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, I was there again. I was like, oh
yeah. So you know
like,
what? So on the top 10 list, Yeah, so basically the two, because they're on the top 10 list for DC, it's basically Joker and Ra's al Ghul. Of the Batman villains, they have the highest body count.
Right, and that makes complete sense. I mean,
yeah.
Let me look at something. Is the Riddler?
But I'm pretty sure the Riddler has killed a ton of people.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a difference between. Okay, here we go. Hold on. Oh wow, there's a list, so there can't be that many. Oh, is this the movie one? The Riddler claims me. Oh, this is the Batman movie. I'm not interested in the movie. I'm interested in the comic.
Oh, he has
guy.
the Riddler has the highest body count of any live action villain.
Well, that's because of the Batman, but that's a different version of the Riddler than what I'm talking about.
Okay, yeah.
Version.
So I'm looking at some commentary people are writing, and somebody wrote, "Classic Riddler focused much more on stealing than killing."
But yeah, and that's jives with what I read on like the DC site and a couple of wiki things I was looking at. Is
and
that
apparently,
his compulsion specifically is to outsmart Batman, who he considers to be his intellectual equal. That's his goal, not to murder people.
Hold on. In the Earth 1 phase of DC, they turned him into a serial killer. And in the New 52,
but that's a revision. So I
know that.
I don't care.
But in the New 52, they made it so that he was still a thief, but he was also willing to kill hundreds if they got in the way of what he wanted.
Okay, well then they've changed him. See, this is what I mean. Is this is now they're just making them all the same. Because to me, what is the difference between the Riddler and Joker besides the riddles and jokes? Is really now that's the difference, and one looks funny? Is that now they're just the same character? So one makes puzzles before he kills 100 people, and the other one just shoots a gas bomb and kills 100 people. One laughs and one has a hat.
I mean, yeah.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. So zero interest. This is all just a big zero interest.
I like the concept. I just feel like I needed more. Because here's the thing. The way this book starts, right, is that it's your Riddler, right? Everyone in this book is treating him like he's your Riddler. Everyone even says, the Riddler doesn't do this. Why would the Riddler do this?
And that emphasizes even more that you have
and the
to
whole,
have a really good reason why he
and
flips.
that's why I think it just needs a longer opener. You can't just or a better explanation, because I read the whole book and I was like, I don't see the moment he crumbles.
Right.
I was like, I need to have that moment that he breaks.
But like I said, and I'm not a writer, but the whole thing
they try to give it to you off scene, because he says the whole thing about his mother, and I'm like, okay, listen, if you're gonna tell me that the Riddler went fucking nuts and took the maximum amount of his intelligence and decided to just fucking go scorched earth, right? Then you need to show me the moment that he breaks. You cannot have it happen off screen or off scene. You know, like I need to see it.
It doesn't
to
seem
have it
like
make
that
sense.
big a thing to make it where she says there was no reason, I just didn't want you. And
there's no answer to the riddle. There's no answer to the riddle.
Yeah, because if his whole, again, this is where you can bring up his kind of compulsion and his psychological obsession with solving riddles. If there's a riddle with no solution and it's the most personal riddle in the world to him, then it makes sense. But you have to lay that out. You have to have it where, you know, it doesn't even have to be a page. It could be a couple of panels where he flashes back and you see as he's growing up, and you know, the one riddle that I will never stop searching for the answer for is this one. In the meantime, since I don't have that answer, I have to craft these for others until I get that. And in fact, here's one better. Make it where the day that I find out why my mother left me, the riddles will end. That will be the end of it for me. And now there is no end because there is no answer. Therefore, why not just go max and just blow it out and get yourself killed? That makes sense to be suicide by Batman. I get that. But you have to lay that out. You know, I don't mind, although I do mind that they are now cranking him up to 11 like the Joker, because, again, it takes away what makes him unique. But let's put that aside because it's a one-shot, and I'm sure it's not in continuity. So fine, but then you have to be able to provide a path.
Yeah, and again, like I said, if you read this book, now you know what they were going for. And now you know that that crucial scene is not there. It's not enough. Like, you hear about it, but you never see it. And I think with a book like this, This book shouldn't have even been from Batman's point of view. This book should have been completely from the Riddler's point of view. They should have given you an interior monologue of the character so that it made sense to you when he goes ape shit. Because this could have been an incredibly good book. The idea is incredibly good because, like you said, up to now, the Riddler's always been one way, right? But think about it, really. If something happened to him that really broke him, and he just said, you know what? Fuck it. That's the concept. That's great. But you've got to show me that moment. You got to get me there so that, it makes sense. Otherwise, like you said, you've just taken a character and changed it. And this is why I worry about the other One Bad Day books, because are you going to do something that's, outlandish to the character without giving me enough to work with? And maybe this is Tom King's weakness. Maybe other writers do it better, but
I am curious. Yeah, I that's another reason is, okay, is this just something that he's ill-equipped to do?
Yeah.
I would be curious what the plotting for this looked like. Did he have a whole story and they said, okay, you have to fit it in 64 pages, and he went, yeah, but I wrote it for 150.
Oh my God! This book needs 150. Honestly.
Well, I don't know. I don't know that it needs even one more page. It's just that we're missing something, and however you have that happen, we have to have that happen. Go ahead.
Let's switch gears and let's talk about Garth Ennis's Batman Reptilian, which is oh
boy,
the utter opposite of the Batman of the Tom King book.
I would imagine.
Man, you know what? I was expecting this to be really bad.
Because of this now, it's going to be great because it's going to be the inverse.
No, it absolutely is. So I thought this book was going to be really bad. I read it like a day or two later, and I was really expecting it to be like, oh, it's going to be a Garth Ennis book, right? A lot of the Garth Ennis stuff is there. For one, Batman being sarcastic is fantastic. In fact, Batman's sense of humor in this book is like horribly funny, because there's shit he says in this book where you're realizing that he's to use a British phrase, he's taken the piss out of a lot of people. So essentially what this book is about is a bunch of villains and their henchmen get thrashed. Like some of them have been ripped apart. Some of them have been disemboweled, just ripped to pieces. And when Batman shows up, and this is like big name villains, like this, I think the first one is the Riddler and Penguin and stuff like that. And so when Batman shows up, everybody's just beat to shit, and they keep just describing the giant monster came and just ripped the shit out of us, and Batman's like, what the hell is going on here? So as the story goes on, other villains keep getting hit. So first it's Riddler and Penguin, and then it's Poison Ivy and was the Mad Hatter, and everyone's they're getting gashed up and ripped up and beaten up, and people are getting partially eaten, right? And so Batman basically is desperately trying to figure out what the fuck is going on here. And he gets hold of a henchman who worked for one of these guys. I think he worked for the Riddler's crew, but he ran out before all this shit happened. And he's trying to get information from this guy about what happened. And the guy's like, well, he's like, there was a big villain meeting recently. And Batman's like, really? He's like, is this one of those meetings where you guys get together and try to figure out a way to kill me? And he's like, yeah, pretty much. He's like, we all got together. He's like, but there was a weird vibe that night. He's like, and everyone was there. The Joker was there with all his henchmen and Riddler and Two-Face. Everyone was there. He's like, Croc was there and Poison Ivy and everybody. He's like, and there was this weird vibe. Everyone got all of a sudden really hyped up for no reason. He goes, and everyone just pulled guns on each other. It's like people pulled guns on friends that they'd had for years. He goes like, I pulled guns on, Johnny Two Fingers. It's like, I know Johnny Two Fingers for 20 years. He's like, I don't know why the hell I was pointing a gun at him. He's like, it was really weird. He's like, we just all had this over the top reaction, and then suddenly it was gone. He's like, and we all kind of backed off. Batman's like, interesting. He's like, well, I want you to go higher up with the Joker. And the henchman guy's like, but why would I do that? He's like, because I'm telling you to do that. He goes, and Batman, he has this great line. He just keeps saying to people, remember, Batman doesn't kill. And the guy's like, yeah, but what does that mean? He's like, that does mean I'm going to kill you. And I think the intent that Garth Ennis has with that phrase is that Batman doesn't kill. He just makes you wish you were dead. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's just going to beat the ever-loving shit out of you till you wish you were dead. And that seems to be what scares people. So the henchman guy goes and he works for the Joker, and he starts feeding Batman information. And Batman is just going from crime scene to crime scene. And no idea what this is. They can't figure it out. And it starts to sound like it's Killer Croc. That Killer Croc has gone nuts. Because when he catches up, Poison Ivy gets hit. And when Poison Ivy gets hit, she says something like, it tasted me, or it bit me and decided I didn't taste right. And Batman's kind of like, well, who does that? And Killer Croc is like the only person who would eat people, right? I mean, I thought it was going to be King Shark. I was hoping it was King Shark. Anyway, so the story goes on. The Joker has a fucking conniption, right? And basically thinks that it's Batman. That Batman has found a way to take out everybody. And he's paranoid as fuck. And he basically gets a whole bunch of hostages in like the botanical. What's that?
Why would he think that Batman would just start killing people?
I don't know. I think he's being paranoid.
Okay.
It makes no sense. It's the Joker. I'm allowing for the fact that it makes no sense.
I have no issue with it.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if there was something I missed. That's why I was.
No.
Curious.
He thinks it's Batman because it's all of Batman's villains, right?
No, so
it's
far,
just
I have,
hitting.
I have no issues with the Joker jumping to this.
So Batman's
history.
So Batman shows up and he kicks the shit out of everybody, and he stops the Joker from killing all these hostages he's taken. At which point something shows up and smashes its way through the henchmen, kills most of them except for two of them that Batman literally saves by stuffing in his trunk and driving away. And Joker gets beat to shit by this thing. And Batman's like, okay. He's like, that's everybody now. He's like, everybody's been hit except for Killer Croc. So he starts hunting for Killer Croc, and he knows like some of his old haunts.
Wait.
And
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Without giving it away yet, is the actual perpetrator a pre-existing Batman rogue person?
No, it isn't.
Okay, got it.
No.
Okay, because I'm sitting here going, "There's no way it's Killer Croc." Go ahead.
No, man. I wasn't prepared for what it was. So essentially, he finds Killer Croc, and Killer Croc is been xenomorphed into a wall, essentially, in the sewer. He's still alive, and Batman's like, what the fuck? And Killer Croc's like, you gotta get me down from here. He's like, I'm connected to this thing. He's like, and I'm fucking dying. And Killer Croc is like a whinging grandmother, the way they play him. And so Batman basically rips him out of the wall and cuts this thing that was coming out of him. And Killer Croc is like, what the fuck was that? He's like, what was this thing that was connected to me? And Batman's like, I think that was an umbilical cord. And Killer Croc's like, come again? He's like, yeah. He's like, I think that you may have birthed something. He's like, Croc, he's like, are you female? And Killer Croc's like, fuck no, I'm not. And he's like, are you sure? He's like, what is your origin? He's like, where do you come from? And he's like, well, I came from Florida and the bayou, and and I had a grandmother who beat me for being weird. And Batman's like, right. And essentially, what you come to understand is that something landed in this bayou that was of an alien nature. And that is what mutated all these kids that were basically in that area. A lot of them died from their mutations. Croc didn't. Croc was one of the few that was actually able to stay alive. So he's not really a crocodile. He's basically some kind of alien thing that morphed into with the human DNA. So Batman's like, yeah, so Batman's like, yeah, right. He's like, so essentially, he's like, we've got alien DNA trying to jive with your DNA, and you've birthed something. He's like, I wouldn't be surprised, he goes, he's like, because we're dealing with what is essentially amphibian genes, he goes, I wouldn't be surprised if your body is trying to turn you into a female. And Croc's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, yeah, he's like, amphibians can change back and forth based on, the needs of sexuality.
You seen Jurassic Park?
Yeah, right. Man, and Croc is, the way they draw Croc, he just has this look of shocked, like, horror, which is great because it's Killer Croc. He's just got this look of shocked horror as to what's happening to him this whole book. And he's like, yeah, he's like, you're putting out, like, they do a test on him and they're like, you're putting out a lot of estrogen. And he's like, what? He's like, yeah. He's like, in fact, I wouldn't be surprised if what happened here was when you went to that meeting with all those villains, right? He's like, you put out essentially a cloud of pheromone that made everybody almost kill each other. He's like, and when that creature was birthed from you, it went looking for you, but couldn't find you. So it started looking for anything that smelled like you, which was all the villains who'd been at that meeting and all the henchmen. And then it tried to suckle off all them and realized that they weren't you. And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, this thing is going to try and suckle off of me? And he's like, yeah, you don't have any like strange teats or anything like that, do you? That is probably one of my funniest lines in the whole book.
At which point, Killer Croc says, now that you mention it, my nipples have been tender lately.
And he's like, no! He's like, fuck no! At which point, this creature shows up. And Batman's like,
you better grow some!
And it's this giant, weird fucking monster thing. It's hilarious. And Batman's like, I think it wants you to, like, mother it. And Croc's like, I'm not gonna fucking mother it. He's like, what the hell are you talking about? At which point, the creature changes its tact. And Batman's like, what is that? What is it? Or Croc is the one that's like, what is it doing? And Batman's like, well, he's like, it can't suckle from you. He's like, I think it wants to mate with you. I laughed so hard at this point in the book. Because if like the whole book, Killer Croc is just in one state of horror to another, realizing what's happening to him. And when he realizes that the creature he's just birthed, like it's very species in that respect. It wants to mate with him. And then everything from that point on is Batman basically grabbing Croc and trying to get away from the monster. And in the end, he pulls a what do you call it? A Drax. He pulls a Drax. He lets himself get eaten by the thing, as in like, but not eaten like it chews him up. Like he jumps straight down the thing's throat, and then has the Batmobile essentially close in on him and explode, which temporarily disables the creature long enough for him to get out and to call. It's not NASA. Who's the Space Force in DC? I can't remember what they are. But essentially, he calls like their version of like of Shield, of Space Shield, whatever. I never remember what they're called in the DC universe. And they show up, and Batman says to the guys, he's like, "You're not gonna take this thing and try to turn it into some kind of super weapon, are you?" And the guy's like, "Oh, come on." He's like, "We're the government." He's like, "We don't do that sort of thing. Surely not." And they take the monster, which is still miraculously alive. And then they've got Killer Croc packed into this like little box, and Killer Croc's like, "You're not gonna let him take me, are you?" He's like, to some weird science lab. He's like, "Come on, man." He's like, "After all we've been through," and Batman's just like, "Killer Croc, we don't even know what you are." He's like, "It might be good to go to a lab and get some answers." he's like, yeah, but they're not going to let me out afterwards, man. He's like, come on. And he's just had it with the whole thing. It was a very funny book. It's got your typical Garth Ennis over the top, gross out violence kind of sprinkled through there. But it was just a very funny, there's something very, oh man, what is it? There's something very Lobo about this book. Do you know what I mean? Like it's got that air of the, maybe it's the art. The art is probably what got me there. If you look up images of it, the guy who did it is Liam Sharp.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I see the artwork. It is.
Yeah,
it does.
There's
have
something.
What do you call
what's
it?
his name?
That guy's
Who's
name?
Bisley? Yeah, there's something very Simon. Yeah, there's something very Simon Bisley about it. So it made and because it's Garth Ennis, I get a strong Lobo vibe. Like if Lobo had shown up at the end of the book to fucking take that alien back to wherever it was from, I would have been surprised. But it was a very fun read. Like Garth Ennis, it wasn't thought-provoking. It wasn't deep. It was a book about a weird crime a weird crime that basically knocked out all these villains at once and then ended up being something absurd and alien. And it's worth it. It's worth it just for the scenes with Croc at the end. The idea of it trying to explain to one of these supervillains that he may have birthed an alien that wants to suckle him. You know, like, I wish I could... It's worth... If you see it in the bookstore, it's worth just opening up towards the end and seeing the expression on Croc's face. You know, when he realizes that what he may have done. So, yeah, I enjoyed it. And after reading it, I still enjoyed it. So it's funny because I thought this felt like it was going to be the weaker book of the two Batman books I read. And it is weaker. Like, they're not going after deep philosophical shit here. This is a monster book. Maybe that's why I like it. This is kind of like reading, oh God, what was the movie with Sizemore? The Relic.
Oh, The Relic, yeah.
Yeah, this is like reading The Relic. You know, except it's Batman is Tom Sizemore and the scientist is Killer Croc. You know what I mean? Like that kind of setup at the end, you know? So, you know, it's a silly horror movie crime book. It just happens to be a Batman book. But it was enjoyable. I liked it quite a bit. So, and this guy, Liam Sharp, I want to see more of his art. Because if all of his stuff is very Bisley, I mean, it's very...
Yeah, it does feel very... it reminds me in many ways of Batman Dread.
Yeah,
some of the angles and the way that darkness of the eyes is done. Like, there's very specific things here that feel like they're influenced from that.
Yeah, and like, it's... I was thinking to myself, he just doesn't let it get... You know, Bisley always let it get a little bit out of control. That's kind of one of his things. Like, the art would kind
seep out of the edges in places.
Yeah. This guy, he's very like Bisley, but he keeps it very under control.
Yeah,
that's kind of like his own
He's almost like a Bisley and Sam Keith mix.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I think that made it way more enjoyable. Like, if this
I really like the art. I really like it. It makes me want to read it more than even the story. And the story sounds interesting.
If it had been poorly drawn, right, it probably wouldn't be as good. But the fact that it's a funny, weird horror story, and then on top of that, it's got that beautiful art running through it. I will definitely look up other stuff that Liam Sharp has done because the illustrations were neat. Yeah, you know, I didn't think about that Sam Keith thing till you said it. I realized there was something else there, and you're right. It's that. Because even the monster when it comes out at the end, there's something very like out of the mind of Sam Keith, you know. So yes, I didn't expect the Garth Ennis book to be the winner of the two that I read, but it pissed me off the least.
Well, and Black Label lets you can say, well, this isn't in continuity. It's a completely independent tale. That helps because then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, and let's be clear. I appreciate that they try these things. I don't think that the One Bad Day book shouldn't have been done. In fact, I wish they'd done a better job of it.
That's my problem with it. Is it doesn't sound like it's well done. That's why I'm like, I'll read the Two-Face one because it's an interesting idea.
I'm glad they try. I'm glad they still try to do different shit, you know?
Also, I mean, Two-Face is a natural for one bad day. He did have one bad day. He got to have his face burned, and then he went crazy. I mean, that's, you know, that is his origin, is he was an upstanding guy, wound so tight until he got acid thrown on his face.
But how do you take him further?
I don't know. I don't. I'm willing to see what somebody else's idea of it is. I don't. I mean, honestly, the way to take him further is to somehow reverse it, but I don't know how you do that. Is that because they always, the way they've always tried to solve it, and I don't think the comic book does this, but the way, if I was going to try something really radically different.
Whoa.
What?
Sorry, I just looked up the Liam Sharp guy.
Yeah.
He apparently has a comic book called Starhenge. It's
Starhenge?
a time-traveling Merlin up against killer robots.
Oh, that sounds great.
That does sound great. Jeez, go on.
So, they've always tried to fix him by fixing his face.
Yeah.
Oh, you get the surgery and look normal, and then, you know, we'll get you counseling, and you can go back to being Harvey Dent. Right? It always unravels. It never works.
But psychologically, it's always there. Yeah.
Right. So why not an attempt to do what they did with the Hulk and Banner and try to make it where, instead of trying to physically correct him,
make him one person?
Try to
them.
take. Yeah. So in other words, Dent couldn't work because he was too wound up in his own perfect white knight personality. And he couldn't reconcile it with this other side of him that was savage and mean and everything else. But aggression is something that in healthy doses could help somebody. You know, the ability to be able to express your anger and to use that as ambition or fuel or whatever. What if they made it where he was a lawyer that just happened to be disfigured? I don't know how to write that, but that would be interesting as a way to say, well, we've already pushed him all the way into the dual personality thing. Has anybody ever tried to decide that, okay, we don't have to make you physically, because that's always going to be a secondary thing then in his mind.
What if we make you somebody who's just kind of shitty all the time, just not super shitty?
Or you know, it's the whole thing of, you know, anger isn't bad. It's unless you delve into it too. No emotion is bad if you don't let it override you.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And by fixing his face, there's always that in your mind, you will always have this fear. Well, what happens if, I don't know, I fall on the sidewalk and get a scar? You know what I mean? It's a superficial fix as opposed to saying we want to incorporate you back into a healthy person. Or first we have to fix your face. Well, that automatically has a whole bunch of baggage to it. And he's going to know that he used to look like this, and he knows what that means is inside him. Rather than hiding it, why not face your defects and try to improve them? I don't know how to write this. I'm not a writer, but that's the direction I would go, is why not make it where he doesn't have to suddenly look normal again?
Yeah.
You know? I don't know. But that's when you say, how do you take it? I don't know.
If you read it, I'll be curious to see how it goes.
Oh, no, I'll read it. 64 pages is nothing, and I love Two-Face, so I'll be curious. I'll be much harsher on it,
64 pages is too little.
Well, okay, you say that. However, I it's funny, when I was in Monterey, there was a great comic book shop that I stopped into, like an old-style comic book shop that I had talked to the owner and everything. Guy was awesome. He's a wonderful tattooer. He's a great artist on his own. He was showing me all this work. He has originals from comic book artists that he's got they're beautiful stuff all over the place.
Yeah.
And I was looking through his comics because he has, the bins with all the comics. And I was looking there was a Secret Origins, which I believe it was number 64. Hold on. I want to see if I'm right. I want to look this up without knowing for sure that I'm right about this. Was it 64? Secret Origins 64. Oh, damn it. I've typed it wrong. Hold on. But anyway, I don't know how long it was, but okay, it was not 64, unless there was a volume 2. Let me look at. There was one with Two-Face, the Riddler, and Penguin. And it was, here it is. Oh, God, that artwork, too, is beautiful. That Two-Face. Oh, sorry. It was Secret Origins Special number 1 from 1989. Has 3 stories. Now, how long is it? Does it give you a page count? Of course it doesn't. So I don't know, but I mean, it can't be that much bigger. Let me see it's Secret Origins Special number 1. Let's see how big this thing. And I remember it being a pretty good set of tales, and the cover art, Two-Face, is sensational looking. If anybody wants to look it up, Secret Origins Special number 1, 1989. I love that version. I wish I could get a print of just that Two-Face. Okay, so here it is. So let's see. Does anybody have a page count? Tags. I can't find. Oh, Bolin did the cover. That's why Brian Bolin did the cover. Well, that makes sense then. Let's see if DC's site has it. I'm just curious because I remember that book. 56 pages less. Written by, here's your writers, Alan Grant,
Okay.
Neil Gaiman, and Mark Verheiden. The only one I don't know is the last one. I don't know Mark Verheiden. But, yeah. And, Sam Keith did the artwork for who? God, I don't remember the art. But those were 3 good stories in 56 pages, which means they didn't even have all those pages for each of those people. You know? So it can be done.
Then they knew how to do it.
So, okay, Original Sins was written by Gaiman. It doesn't say who. The Riddler was written by Gaiman as well. Inked by Matt Wagner. Oh, the Grendel guy did that. That's amazing.
Jesus, yeah.
Yeah.
It was so funny you call him the Grendel guy. I'm like, that's the mage guy.
Oh, yeah, Mage. That's too. Yeah. Oh, okay. So in that story, Harvey Dent's ex-wife, which was Grace in the animated series and apparently is in this book as well, is telling the story about how recounts how she was once attacked by an ex-con with a grudge against Harvey Dent. While she tells the story of his downfall, we see the flashback from his perspective where he learned of what was happening to her and was trying to figure out whether he should do anything about it. He was struggling with his secondary personality. See, that's a great little story. It doesn't have to be, but I know these are meant to reinvent them. Okay. Fine. All right. But it means that you can do good stories in obviously less than 64 pages. So that is not an excuse to me. That means that it wasn't written well or something was missing. If you and I both, you read it. I didn't. I'm just commenting from the cheap seats, but you read it and you're saying it doesn't seem to work.
No, and the thing is when you're reading it, like I said, when I was reading it, I enjoyed it. And it wasn't until I finished it that I stopped and thought about it. And I was like, wait a minute. I was like, there's something missing here. I was like, I'm not getting I understand what they wanted. I understand what the idea was. This is very Tom King, right? Tom King, he sets up your heroes and then he shows you what went wrong, right? So with Strange, the Adam Strange book he did, where you find out that Strange basically he started working for the alien forces against his own people, essentially because he told them he'd give them Earth, and they had his daughter, right? But you don't see that till way later on, right? But then when you do see it and you realize what's been going on, it makes sense why he fell apart, right? With this book, it's like, I don't get that scene. I need that scene or else it doesn't make sense. The Adam Strange book wouldn't make sense if you didn't have that scene. It's what lets you know that the character has been broken. Also, they tortured the shit out of Adam Strange. Like, they got him there. With the One Bad Day, it's like, I need that moment where he's shattered. Because I have no problem with this idea that something could happen that could utterly break somebody. But you can't give me the aftermath of that, especially with a known character, without actually giving me the moment of being shattered. Listen, we know what shattered Batman. They constantly go back to it. He saw his parents killed before him. That is the moment that shattered Batman. He's been broken and fucked up later on, but that's really the moment that got him. So, and it goes back to childhood trauma. Childhood trauma will always get you. Well, they could have taken the angle of childhood trauma with this book and just been like, this is something that goes back to the very beginning of Riddler's personality and shown it to us. I don't think Tom King it's not in his repertoire to do really short stuff. His books are longer. They take their time to unravel. Think of the, what's his name? Scott Free.
Mr. Miracle.
Mr. Miracle. Yeah, the Mr. Miracle book. That is a book that it slowly gets to the end of its story, right? That's not a short book. It's not a short book. I love that book, but it's not a short book. Tom King is one of those writers. it takes him time. Garth Ennis can do a short one shot and have it be violent and ridiculous and funny, and you'll enjoy the fuck out of it. Tom King needs time, and I think that if this book was twice the length, it probably would be way better. But yeah, 60. It's not that 64 pages is short for everybody, but it's definitely short for him. You know.
Well, obviously, in this case, it was. I don't know. Look, we don't all know what goes into this. Maybe things were edited out. Who knows? I don't know the full story, but obviously something is missing.
I'd be pissed if he did like a full book and they're like, right, we're going to cut this down.
Look, it's happened. This has happened. It has happened before. It is very possible that there were script pages that they said maybe whatever he wanted to do, DC wasn't comfortable with. Maybe there was something, and so there's a piece missing that we don't know about. I mean, I don't know. Since I don't know everything, I have to, of course, leverage my criticism by saying this is not a self-published Tom King book where he had complete creative control. So there may be that things were moved around or pages were cut or who knows what, and it influenced the final product. But I don't believe saying 64 pages is too short. No. You know what? If he was told it's 64 pages and this is what he wrote and they changed nothing, then I'm sorry he dropped the ball. But I don't know that that's what happened. All based on what you're telling me and my knowledge of the character. Admittedly, they've turned him into a mass murderer, which to me means who cares anyway. But
and it's annoying because he really wanted to do this book.
Well, look, listen.
Yeah, I'm reading a quick interview with him about it, and he was really interested in doing this.
Not every person, as good as they are, makes something great every time. This may be exactly what he wanted, and in his mind, perhaps this story makes complete sense, A to B to C. Fine. If that's the case, good for him. He got to do what he wanted to do. I'm not going to criticize a guy for doing what he wanted to do. In the interview, they're complaining about the fact that it's 64 pages. He said it took him as long to write this as it took him to write Mr. Miracle because they kept cutting it down to make it fit. See, I don't know why they. Yeah. Well,
I don't understand.
Okay. Oh, I know why. Because.
Yeah.
Well, there's a few reasons.
No, I don't know why they wanted it to be 64 pages.
Well, probably because there's probably a publishing reason. There's probably some publishing or monetary reason.
Well, they wanted 3 issues. It was a 3-issue run.
Oh, it's 3 issues?
Yeah, 64 pages is 3 issues. I think they wanted.
Okay, no. So, but 64 pages is total. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
Probably because if his was 4 issues and another creator's was 3,
Yeah.
Are you saying he's better? I don't. There's always internal politics. There's always a lot of garbage in the. That's why I'm saying I have to leave a little caveat here that we don't know the entirety of the creative process beginning to end. It could be that he decided that, you know what, I want to work on the Riddler so badly that I will squeeze this story into what they want, even if I know in the back of my mind. I did a similar thing. I won't specify, but in one of the Magic cards I worked on, I was told to do something. Fortunately, that I didn't really care about, but I looked at it and went, I don't think that makes it look better, but if that's what you want, I'll do it. Because, hey, when am I ever going to get this chance again? Maybe never. So I just was like, sure, I can do that. Maybe that was Tom King. Maybe he had an extra 2 pages that really defined this backstory, and he could not figure out how to get it to work in 64. And rather than give up or fail the project or lose it, he said, screw it. I want to work on the Riddler. They're giving me the Riddler. This is the 64 pages I can turn in. That's what I'm doing. I am not going to criticize that. If this was his vision, then he executed his vision. Everyone else be damned. Who cares?
Yeah, see, reading the interview with him, right? I wish he'd had a book that was 3 times as long because the thought process behind what he wanted to do is all there.
Sure.
And I get the sense that he did write all these scenes.
Very possible. That's what I'm saying.
They just wanted it so short.
Yeah, we don't really know. So
yeah,
it doesn't.
That's a shame.
I don't have any interest in what it sounds like the outcome was. But if he got to do the story he wanted to do, or as much as he could, and he got to work on the Riddler, good for him, man. Whatever. Now, it's certainly not like he hasn't written other good stuff. So good.
I'll
for him.
tell you something. I'll tell you something kind of weird and negative, though. See how we were saying we love that guy Liam Sharp, dude. Yeah. He did that Grant Morrison Green Lantern book that was not good. And what's funny is that
The
I don't
artwork wasn't
remember.
good, or the story wasn't good.
No, well, that was the book that they turned it into like a weird, crappy police procedural.
Oh yeah, but was the artwork good?
The art was nothing impressive. I went back and just looked at art from it, and yeah, it was.
Listen,
It was very domestic.
look.
Yeah.
I know everybody loves him now, but Mike Mignola's early work, not impressive. It's not. Go back and read some of his first books where he's illustrating them. They're not that great.
Sam Keith's stuff was always a bit weird.
Okay, there's another one. Sam Keith's early stuff is not. I'm not saying it's bad. Who am I to say? But it's not where he got to.
Yeah, he was trying really hard to do something more conventional, but his own style was like bleeding out. It was very funny. Like that's why I kind of liked the first Sandman book for that. It's Sam Keith desperately trying to keep it in the lines, and his whole Max style wanting to like blow out through it. You know.
Yeah. Here, I'm going to send you an image. Right now, look at this. Now, don't get me wrong. This isn't bad, but would you peg that as Mike Mignola?
Hold on, I gotta find it.
That's in Skype. You'll see it. It's right there. I mean, that's not that.
Is that Mike Mignola?
That's his early Submariner work. You can kind of see it if you look at the edges. You can kind of see it.
It's not a great Submariner.
Well, but that's what I'm saying is artists develop over time. Jay Lee's early stuff I didn't think was that great. Look, listen. Start rough.
The body is good. Right,
but you look at his stuff today, you wouldn't think it's the same guy because his style came out as he went along.
Yeah.
So probably early on, he was trying to fit in.
It's a very Dracula Aquaman look going.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. You can kind of see at the edges where he'd end up. Sam Keith, same thing. Early on, these guys were probably just trying to work, and the way you work is you work fast, you work in the style they want you to. That's what you do.
Make it look the way, make it look conventional. Make it fit.
The Sharp guy, I have no idea how long he's been doing professional comics. Maybe not that long. So early on, was he doing different work because he just took a job? Sure.
He's been around for a while.
Well, listen.
But I mean, like I said, but looking at the different art he's done, it's very strange. Like the Green Lantern stuff he did was very sort of kind of boring and conventional, but then you see his stuff now, and maybe he just has the time now to just do what he wants,
or he may have found a different technique. Don't forget, Jim Lee did that Deathblow comic, and he changed his style completely. I mean, you could still see it, but he was using heavy brushes and black ink and red, like these really different you wouldn't have seen it as Jim Lee right away. I think it was Deathblow. I think that was the guy's name. Or the character's name. If you look at that work, I mean, don't get me wrong, you can tell it's Jim Lee. But
the black and white book, was it?
Yeah, you look at that one. If you look at some of the interiors of the first ones he did, they're really weird looking. They don't look like his stuff. Like here, I'll send this image. I remember this image so well because this was the promo image for it. Now, if I were to send you this, right? I send you that.
I am waiting.
Okay. Yeah, you look at that, and you can see the eye and that.
You know what that reminds me of?
What's that?
It's very Frank Miller.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. So maybe that Sharp guy, adopted a couple of different techniques from stuff he saw and liked it and did something different. There's nothing wrong with that. But that Deathblow book was a very different Jim Lee book. Yeah, you could kind of tell it was him, but he was also experimenting. He didn't ultimately end up sticking with that. He went back to kind of his more classic way of drawing. But who knows? Artists have different evolutions, so that I don't know.
No, and they are allowed to evolve. And it's just and listen, even painters, like fine painters, they all have their periods where it's like, this is my blue period, and this is my early Van Gogh, later Van Gogh, shit like that. Yeah, people change.
Yep.
So, but yes, I prefer Liam Sharp's work in this Batman book. It's a lot of fun.
Well, I prefer later Mignola to early. That's for sure. So yeah, it does. Sometimes that's how it goes.
Well, and then there's the other guy who works for him who draws like he does.
Right.
It's different, but it looks like Mignola. So it's funny in that respect.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a movie review. my review won't be particularly long because I'm not done with the game yet. But I did want to say I picked up the newest Assassin's Creed game because I kept seeing trailers for it. I kept reading how they were going back to basics with it. And I thought, I miss those early games.
Yeah, you know
I
what?
like the new ones.
I turned somebody on to Assassin's Creed, a Middle Eastern guy, and he did not want to play the early ones because he didn't like the idea of them turning like what he knows like into a game. But he didn't realize that that Ezio was all Italy. He thought that the Ezio games were tied into. I mean, they are tied into, but they're
related, but they're not the same story.
Yeah. So I got him. I told him to try some of the later ones, and he tried Valhalla, and he fucking loves it.
Oh, see, I don't like Odyssey or Valhalla. No, that's where they got too bloated for me. I stopped after Origins. Huh?
Why is it too bloated?
Well, because they're just big empty map. I started playing Odyssey, and I started riding or on a horse. And it's just nothing. There's no life to it. You're just riding through empty locales because they wanted to say we have a huge map. And then Valhalla was the same thing. It was just a checkpoint fest in empty areas.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it became, this isn't, now with Mirage.
We hate running around in games, yeah.
I don't hate running around, but I got to feel, like in the Spider-Man game, you're going through the city. There's people everywhere. There's cars. There's things happening. It's alive. It feels like you're going through a location that has some life to it. Odyssey and Valhalla don't have that. They're just kind of big expanses of nothing in between these things that happen, and that's just not appealing to me. I don't want to spend an hour riding a horse in a big and barren thing and realize, there's nothing here except one collectible. I don't need that, especially because I have to get every collectible, and I want to be wasting that much time. So with Mirage, they basically remade, for all intents and purposes, the first game. They stripped it way down. There's essentially one city that you operate through the majority of the game. Now, there's areas outside of it, but you're really inside Baghdad. And they've stripped out all the RPG. I mean, not all of it, but there's no more leveling system. It's very stealth based. You have to blend in with people again. You have to be careful how much stuff you do in public now, because there's a meter and you'll start seeing posters that are wanted posters. And you have to be careful if you do that. Certain things in front of, like the people will react and start screaming, and then the guards will come after you. So it feels much more like the first game. It is like a remastered version of the first game. It's great because it's in Arabic, so I turned off English. I turned on the Arabic. I turned on subtitles, so they're all naturally speaking, which I think is a lot better. The music is fantastic. It looks magnificent, but now it's a lot of. It doesn't stop you from doing things. So I went to an area and I just
you're not playing Altair, are you?
No, you're playing a character who, ironically enough, was in Valhalla named Basim or Basim. I'm not sure how you're supposed to pronounce it. Because when they speak in Arabic, they're speaking quickly, so I can't really tell you. Some of the words kind of flow right by me, so I'm reading the subtitles, but I like hearing it in the native language, and I want to hear them speaking English. So, because I know they weren't speaking English all the time in Baghdad in 16 whatever, I'm pretty sure. I might be wrong,
or at all, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, I don't want that. But no, it's a different character, but it feels like Altair. It feels like that game where, and even the climbing now. In the other games, they started making it where you could just climb anything. But if you remember in the older games, you had to find the path. You had to look for the kind of rock sticking out or stonework sticking out. You could only climb things a certain way. And they've brought that back. So now when you go up to a tower, you have to kind of look at it. You have to kind of climb it and pay attention. You can't just hold the button and hold the up thing and look over and start looking through Instagram while you're climbing a tower. You actually have to climb the tower. And then you get to the top and it does the spin. It just feels like the first game again.
Why did they go back to this direction?
Because I think they started realizing people were not buying the bigger games anymore and people were missing the kind of more focused gameplay. I'm sure it was also cheaper to develop because it's shorter, which is fine with me. Because this one is not 72 hours of exploring a map that's the size of planet Mars.
I know that Odyssey got so big, and there was a lot of things that pissed people off with that game.
That. So was Valhalla, same thing. I mean, they just kept saying, we've got the biggest map ever. Even Origins, which I love. Even Origins had large parts. When you would go out into the desert, don't get me wrong, it was neat to go find the Sphinx. It was, and to climb the pyramids. But there's nothing in between that. You're just riding on the sand dunes. It's like, that's fine, but you can't just keep making that bigger and bigger with more empty stuff. You have to feel like you're doing something, that there's something going on. Otherwise, it is just literal. You don't even look at the game anymore. You just, hold the button down and you look at do something else. That's not a way to play a game. In this, I mean, the stealth element is great. I'm like creeping across rooftops. I'm wait till somebody goes around the corner. I whistle just right to get one guy to kind of peel off. Then I go down to the bush, and I whistle again. Guy comes over, grab him, shove him in the bush. And what's great is they added this thing, which I don't think they did in the other games, or at least I don't remember it happening, is if you're hiding behind something, like let's say there's a little piece of a wall, right? And you're against the corner of it, and you go, and the guy comes over, and you stab him, you immediately then drag him behind the wall because you're trying to hide him. You don't even have to do it. It just does it. You sort of stab the guy in the neck and then you just drag his body behind the wall. It's little stuff like that where I'm like, okay, yeah, they realized what people liked about the older games and they're getting back to that now. They're stripping it down and they're making it feel like just the idea of going up to people and you just stand near them. And I think they abandoned this almost entirely, even in the Ezio series, where you would just, when you're near people, if you stay still for a minute, like this glow comes over the whole group, and now you're pretending that you're part of them, even though they don't know you.
That takes you back to Ezio.
Yeah, Altair did it too, where he'd walk in the middle of the monks and stuff. But yes, Ezio did it too. And then they stopped it at some point because they started making it more actiony. And there are action parts.
It was the whole blending in thing, yeah.
And that's what it says now. When you go up to a bench, it says blend in, press triangle, and then you'll sit on the bench and kind of look down. And you're just kind of keeping yourself outside of the notice of the people. So when the guards are coming by, if you have a wanted level, you sit on the bench, you kind of look down, and they just don't really look at you. Or if you're near them, if you get too close, they notice you. If you're kind of with other people, they don't see you as much. So I like it. This might be one of my favorite games since the Ezio stuff. It might be even better than Origins because it just feels like it's so focused. A lot of reviews said that this is a focused version of this game again. And I love the fact that I'm just creeping around rooftops. And it is actually, you have to be very careful if you're discovered, because if there's more than a few of them, they will cut you to pieces very quickly. This is not, because that was another thing with the old games. All you'd have to do is hit one button to parry and you'd immediately kill them. That's out the window. You have to be careful. When you get 2 or 3 guys on you, you have to run. And you have to run and get out of their sight and then go even further and then hide, because they'll just keep coming for you. So I really like it. I like the character. I don't know that the story is going to be, reinventing the wheel or anything like that, but I like the guys so far.
They can't really go that much further with the story. They basically gave a shit after the whole Desmond thing. Like, is there really any future story left to it?
Well, supposedly there is, but I didn't play through Valhalla, so I don't know the ending of that game. I didn't even watch it. I didn't care. With this game, apparently they do start bringing in something wacky at the end, which is fine. I mean, whatever. I look at this.
Is there any part of it that takes place in the future?
I think the ending reference jumps to the future. Like you're still living the memories, because I was paying attention. I was curious about that. And when I killed some civilians, it said desynchronized, and it immediately kicked me out of it. So they are still doing the thing where you are living through the memories of somebody else. I just don't know who's living these memories. So I don't know who that will be. I also don't really care. It can be wacky and goofy. The future stuff can be as weird as they want it to be, because, that's honestly, it's sort of just it almost always felt like a playground with the future stuff. Because, I think they've given up on that being a major story thing. So now I think they can just have fun with that. But as long as the in-game, the memory story is something engaging, that's good. And I like Basim's story is very good because he's kind of a street thief and he's got this partner, and, he starts to get a little bit arrogant and he's really eager to join up with the assassins, which aren't called the assassins yet. And he goes to try to steal this thing from the Caliph, which I believe is, at that time, is the king, or, whatever the version of it is, the head of the city. And he gets caught, and so they massacre his whole village, including crucifying children. And
Jesus.
So it's brutal. He comes back and realizes it's his fault, that they came searching for him and they massacred everybody, and you do interact with these children, so they give you the backstory. So it's not just kids. You know them. You get he's talking with them. There's a little bit of setup for it, and then they're all dead. And at that point, he's like all in with the assassins because he has nobody left, which is what they want. They want people who are all in. And now he has no ties to anything. They just killed everybody and strung them up as examples. So I already like it's brutal. And his reaction to it is great. So I like the character. He has a great motivation. All that stuff is great. So, and honestly, I've spent just a lot of time just running around the city and kind of getting used to it and trying to memorize it. It feels a lot like what they did with the Yakuza series, where it's always the same city. For 90% of the game, you're always in one city. And that becomes this thing where you have muscle memory of the city, even as it changes eras. You know where certain things are. So you can kind of navigate without the map. And I like it when they have a central location. So being almost all in Baghdad, I'm starting to get a sense of the layout of the city. So I kind of know where to go without having to keep looking at the map now. Not everything. I'm still a far cry from that. But I'm starting to get the different districts down. I'm starting to get a sense of where things are.
You're remembering it like it's a place.
I'm starting to see landmarks, so that I know.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'm in the southern part of the city or the northern part. I can't tell you. I couldn't navigate from north to south without having to look at the map marker here and there. But I know when I'm in certain districts, and I'm sure the more I play it, because I'm gonna search on everything. Because that's the other nice part is, it's all in the city. Almost all the collectible stuff is in the city, so you can do multiple things in an area. You don't have to go all the way over here to do this and then come all the way back over. That's another thing. It's a lot of wasted time. Whereas I like climbing the buildings because it is kind of like, okay, is that climbable? Oh, no, it's not. Okay, so I have to go over here. Oh, okay, got it. I have to do that. All that stuff is great. And it's a beautiful version of Baghdad. I'm sure it's accurate. I don't know, but it looks great. It runs great because it's on PlayStation 5 now. So it's almost all the little hitches and glitches of the old game are all gone. And I would love them to... I mean, Capcom did it with Resident Evil. If they were to remake the Ezio series like this, I'd pay a lot of money for it. If they did all those games,
I just don't know. I just don't know if they will, because their mindset seems to have changed.
Well, it depends. If Mirage does well, and especially, I don't know what its sales numbers are,
Because
but I know a bunch of people picked it up.
Because I think the problem is if they redo the Ezio games, they have to bring all the Desmond stuff back to front and center, which reminds people that they totally lost the thread.
No, they don't. They don't, actually. They could just excise all of that stuff. They could.
Wow, just bring the Ezio stuff for us and then leave all the Desmond stuff behind?
When they did Resident Evil 3, they cut a lot of stuff from that remake, which pissed off a lot of people. But honestly, I didn't mind. I mean, I could tell there were some things that were cut out, but they basically said we couldn't remake all of it or it would have been way too expensive. So do you want a prettier version of this game or do you want nothing? And honestly, it sold very well. They just redid 4. So I think they're going to redo 5. So obviously, people can whine and complain all they want, which means going on to whatever social network they want and whine and bitching about it for 3 or 4 months. But if the sales say otherwise, that's what we're going to do. So, yeah. I am enjoying, if you gave up on it, which I did. Like I said, after Origins, I was kind of done. And they've said, what Ubisoft has said is, we are humbled by the positive reception. Mirage is the biggest new-gen launch in terms of unit sales to date for Ubisoft. Well, that sounds good, So, and this is cheaper. They also did sell this as a cheaper release. So this one is not the $60 kind of new standard. It's $50. Now, it's only $10, but it's not nothing that they've sold it at a cheaper price. Yeah. And the fact that it does seem to be, for most people, I think it's the best one I've played in quite a while because I do like the fact that it feels like what got me into this series in the beginning. Yes, I would love to have the future stuff come back. Sure. I thought that stuff was great.
But I still stand by the fact that I just don't think they wanted to put enough money into it. I mean, remember I said to you that Watch Dogs should have been the future version of Assassin's Creed. If you and I still think that would have been the most incredible game if you'd sandwiched something like that together, where you'd had this incredible past game, and then half of it was playing in this amazing future game. You wouldn't have known what you wanted to do with yourself.
I agree, but I will say that playing Mirage makes the counter argument that well, if we're not going to put the money in to do everything, we'd better focus on the core thing and get it right.
Then let's scrap the other thing and just stick with the past.
And if there's no future stuff, I won't care. I really
Isn't that essentially what Black Flag did, though?
Well, Black Flag still had it, but what they kept doing was reducing it. They kept pushing it further and further in the background until it became irrelevant. That's what happened. And partially because they wrote themselves into kind of a corner where they didn't know what the hell they were doing anymore. And it didn't make any sense. Like, you couldn't really figure out what was going on. They explained it somehow, but I think that it became less of a focus, and it showed in the writing and the way it was unfolding. And so rather than just literally drag a corpse along because everybody expects it to show up at the party, it's better to cut it loose and stick with the thing that you actually have interest in, which is historically recreated stealth. And in that regard, Mirage is great. I have no bad things to say about it. I've been having a blast with it because it does feel like it smartly reduced the map down. It gave you the tools to do everything, and you can do everything almost immediately. Yeah, there's skills to improve, but I was immediately leaping off buildings and stabbing people in the neck, and that's exactly what I remember doing with Altair. That was the whole thing, is go forth and assassinate the bad guys. That's it. Put everything else aside. So maybe it's better off jettisoning the future story thing they didn't seem interested in after a while anyway. So far, so good. I'm not missing the future stuff, and what is here is very entertaining.
Why did they do the future stuff in the first place, then? I guess my question.
I
guess they wanted a way to frame it, but I mean...
No, in the beginning, I think they really liked it. I think that they did.
They could have made these games chronologically, like from the past up, and you would have stayed with it. Because you were with the assassins fighting the paladins?
No, Templars.
Templars. Yeah. There you go. It's
Okay, so I'll tell you. The first one, I believe it was purely because they wanted a Shyamalan type twist, which was because remember that game was marketed as a historical stealth game, and then when it was released is when everyone went, "Whoa, wait a minute! This is actually a simulation." That was its big hook. And then once you do that, you obviously want to sell more games, therefore you have to keep the story going, and that's how they were doing it. And then I think there's a point where they realized that they kind of had run out of story or didn't really know what more they wanted to do or didn't care, and players didn't really seem to care all that much. It was getting a little bit out of hand. So, I don't know, but that's what I always remember reading, and at one point they basically said, we're not really interested, and we don't feel like players are either in the future stuff anymore, so we're going to start peeling that back.
Yeah,
at least in the case of Mirage, I think it's good. If this is what they focused on, it's the right thing.
Especially when they don't seem to care. If they're not gonna, if they're gonna go all in, then don't bother going in.
And
anymore.
I don't honestly know how many people involved with the original game are still with the studio. So it could be that. It could be that the people who were really into the narrative left. That happens a lot. So if this is a way to kind of wipe the slate clean. I mean, they are still talking about, there is still the Assassins versus the Templars, but maybe they don't do the future stuff. Maybe what you just suggested is what they're doing. They're going to build up to it. So they're starting here because they're not even called the Assassins and the Templars yet.
Before before Altair.
Correct. Because there's not even Assassins yet. They're called the Order of the Ancients is one, and then the hidden ones are the Assassins. So... It's actually possible Altair will be in this game somewhere. That, you'll meet him or whatever. I don't know. But actually it would be really wild. No, they couldn't do that. I was going to say, because maybe Altair could be a descendant of Basim. It could be. Or Basim. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce it. I don't care. Maybe they are restarting it. Like I said, the important part is I'm having a lot of fun playing the game, and it feels like it's the dialed-in version that used to be around. And I'd rather them keep that going than try this balancing act if they really don't believe in it, or just making the game and keep saying it's 50% bigger, but it's 50% bigger with nothing.
Well, yeah.
There's no benefit to that. So
there's no meat. There's no meat to this. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a lot of empty calories. That's what it is. So Mirage feels like it's an actual satisfying meal.
And we've joked around this before. This idea that if a map gets too big, at some point or another, it becomes like the real world.
Yes.
Where you're like, oh, look, we're in the desert for months.
Right.
Eve Online. It got to a point with Eve Online where we were trying to get from one side of like, what was it, like a 9-hour jump to get from one side of, in real time. You're like, what?
And outside of the fact that the music was spectacular, it wasn't worth it.
You just have to leave it on in the background and hope you didn't get attacked.
Right. Yeah, and that's just not it's not a game for me. Let's put it like that. So
no, I don't know. I don't know who has the time, but I don't have the time for that.
Yeah. Mirage feels like it's more respectful of people's time, and it's frankly a better game for focusing on.
Ooh, see, that's a really good review right there. More respectful of people's time.
Yeah. So
that's a good review for me.
I haven't finished it yet, but honestly, the gameplay is so good, I don't really think I could care if the story isn't. And I don't think it's going to be terrible. It may not be a great story, but I don't know if
but you know what? If the game is fun to play, you'll very often let the story go.
And that's what I'm saying.
You're there to play.
Yeah. So I have a lot of confidence based on what's happened so far that this historical story is going to be good. Now, if they start injecting the future stuff and it's goofy and silly, who cares? It's the future stuff. So I'll let you know once I finish it. But like I said, this is such a tremendous improvement on my limited experience with the former two, which I played for maybe 2 hours each and just checked completely out of. I went, nope, I have no interest in this. Again, zero interest. It just, at no point did it engage me in any way. This immediately went right back into, I just like it so far immensely better. Because I feel like they
maybe it's also
the fat.
Maybe it's also the setting. Maybe you just like the Middle Eastern setting as well.
Well,
Origins, you really liked Origins,
but that was Egyptian. So yeah, but I also like the Ezio stuff because
Egypt is still considered to be part of the Middle East, sir.
Well, the reason I wanted to play Odyssey was because of the setting. Is because Greece, this sounds great, but there was nothing to it. Again, if they cut out all the fat, that game probably would have been better because Greece, as far as I understand the DLC, you were fighting, the monsters from the mythology. But I'm not going to play a game for 70 hours where 30 of it is basically riding around just to fight Medusa. I'm not going to do that. It's not worth it to me. So you have to cut that down. And that's what it feels like Mirage is. Okay, we're going to make this, it's not linear, but it's definitely a contained open world game where the city is your open world, but you're not going far outside of that.
And you're only in the one city, right?
There are little satellite towns, but Baghdad is the main city. That's where you really are. And the satellite things, you go to them and come back, and it doesn't take that long. And it's honestly like the starting point is outside of Baghdad, and there's a couple of little like digs and places in the desert outside of it. But no, most of it is inside of Baghdad, from what I've read and so far from what I've played. Once you hit Baghdad, that's kind of that's where you're going to be, and that's where it's operating so far. So it's not going to be as sprawling as the other ones.
Yeah, there you go.
So far, if you kind of checked out on Assassin's Creed and you wish it was more like the old games, you might want to try out Mirage. I haven't finished it, so unless something radically changes, but all the reviews I've read make it sound like, no, this is what it is. And just the gameplay feels so much more, and this is normally you don't think this is an improvement with gameplay necessarily, but it's so stripped down. And again, the word focus gets used a lot. I think it's a perfect phrase for it. This is a game that is focused on the stuff that people liked in the beginning, and they're doing that again. So as long as it sticks with that, I think I'm going to enjoy it a lot. So on that note, you have a couple of comics to read, a potential video game to play, and we ended up almost talking for 2 hours anyway, so much for a rec show where we don't talk for that long. On that note, enjoy your weekend, whatever you do. We'll talk to you again next week. Visit OzoneNightmare.com to subscribe to new episodes, browse through our back catalog, or to find links to support the show. Follow @OzoneNightmare on Twitter for the latest episode postings and other show information. If 280 characters just isn't enough, you can always email us, theozonenightmare@gmail.com. The opening theme for the show is provided by Heartbeat Hero. The closing theme is provided by Ogre. Please visit and support these artists using the links in the show notes for each episode.